I don't care.
I don't care. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I am a federal agent.
What?
In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. The boarding gate was crowded, buzzing with the usual impatience of travelers eager to stake their claim in the narrow aisles of the plane. Voices overlapped with the steady calls of the gate agents. Sarah Whitmore's voice, however, cut above them all. "Excuse me, I need clarification," she snapped at the airline staff, her perfectly manicured nails drumming the counter. "I paid for first class. I don't want to be surrounded by riffraff, you understand." The agent smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am, you're confirmed for seat 1A. That's the bare minimum," Sarah huffed. "But lately, standards have been slipping. People who don't belong in first class somehow find their way there. It's disgusting." The agent's smile faltered, but she said nothing. From the seating area, Marcus Reed adjusted the strap of his leather carry-on. He'd heard every word. He was used to hearing words like that. Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a navy blazer and dark jeans, professional yet understated. His presence was quiet, but it carried weight. He scanned the gate calmly, as if nothing had happened, though the flicker in his eyes betrayed irritation. Sarah turned, spotting him, her lips curled. "See, that's exactly what I mean," she said loudly, pointing. "Do you really think he belongs in first class?" Marcus raised his gaze, steady and unflinching, but he didn't respond. The gate went silent for a breath, passengers pretending not to hear while listening closely. The agent stiffened. "Ma'am, all customers are welcome in first class if they have the ticket," Sarah scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, some people should just know their place." A few passengers exchanged glances. Most looked away, burying themselves in phones, unwilling to intervene. Marcus inhaled slowly, his jaw flexing. Still, he said nothing. When the boarding call for first class was announced, Marcus rose at the same time as Sarah. Their eyes met. "You're not really," Sarah began, her voice dripping disbelief. Marcus stepped forward calmly, offering his boarding pass to the scanner. The agent beeped him through without hesitation. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Reed." Sarah blinked, her face tightening. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, fumbling for her bag. "Absolutely ridiculous." Passengers watched as the two walked down the jet bridge, tension trailing behind them like a storm cloud. The narrator's voice settled like a lens over the scene. It began, as it always did, with silence, not the silence of peace, but of complicity. One woman's arrogance echoed, and an entire crowd chose stillness over courage. And in that silence, injustice breathed easily. Marcus walked steadily, eyes forward. Sarah's heels clicked furiously against the floor. The storm was only beginning. First class smelled faintly of leather and champagne. Flight attendants moved gracefully, placing coats into closets and offering warm towels. Marcus slid into his seat, to be, and settled with practiced ease. He placed his carry-on beneath the seat in front of him, and folded his blazer neatly across his lap. The calm didn't last long. Sarah stormed down the aisle, her eyes immediately locking on Marcus. Double quotes. "No, absolutely not," she blurted. "This can't be right." A flight attendant approached with a welcoming smile. "Can I help you find your seat, ma'am?" Sarah jabbed her boarding pass toward the attendant. "Seat 1A. Front row, window." "But this," she gestured sharply at Marcus, "this is not what I paid for." The attendant blinked, glancing at Marcus, then back at her. "Ma'am, Mr. Reed isn't to be. That doesn't affect your seat." Sarah leaned closer, lowering her voice but not enough to hide it. "Look, sweetheart, I don't mean to be difficult, but why is someone like him even in first class? It's not appropriate." Marcus exhaled slowly, his head tilting slightly toward her. "Someone like me?" he asked evenly. Sarah's lips tightened. "You know exactly what I mean." Passengers around them shifted uncomfortably. One man coughed into his hand. Another woman ducked her head, pretending to scroll through her phone. The flight attendant cleared her throat. "All customers in first class have paid for or been assigned their seats fairly. Let's get you comfortable in yours." Sarah scoffed but slid into 1A, directly in front of Marcus. She muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "First class isn't what it used to be." Marcus leaned back in his seat. folding his arms. His gaze was calm, but his jaw was taut. That the engines roared as the plane began taxiing. Safety instructions echoed overhead, but Sarah kept grumbling, rolling her eyes each time Marcus shifted. Finally, she spun in her seat, looking back at him. "Tell me something," she sneered. "Do you actually belong here, or did they upgrade you out of pity?" A hush fell over the cabin. Marcus met her gaze steadily. "My ticket says to be. That's all that matters." Sarah laughed harshly. "Oh, please, money can buy you a seat, but it can't buy you class." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's voice was low but firm. "Maybe it's not money or class that's the issue. Maybe it's respect, something you don't seem to carry on board." Gasps whispered from nearby seats. The flight attendant hurried over again. "Please, let's keep voices down. We'll be in the air shortly." Sarah snapped her fingers at her. "Do your job, and move me away from him. I don't feel safe sitting this close." Marcus's brows lifted. Safe? From what? A man reading quietly in his seat. Her eyes narrowed. From someone who doesn't belong in first class. That's what. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. The flight attendant shifted nervously, caught between appeasing Sarah's aggression and acknowledging Marcus's calm dignity. "Ma'am, there are no other seats available up front. Please try to relax." Sarah turned back around sharply, muttering, "Unbelievable, just unbelievable." Minutes passed in tense silence as the plane ascended into the clouds. The narrator's voice whispered through the scene. "Prejudice rarely hides. It sits boldly in aisle seats and reclines in privilege, expecting the world to bend. And when the world doesn't bend fast enough, it breaks into rage." Sarah pressed her call button. A chime rang out. The attendant appeared instantly. "Yes, ma'am. I want champagne, cold, and I don't want to be ignored because I spoke the truth." She cast a glance back at Marcus, her lips curling. Marcus shook his head slightly, murmuring just loud enough, "Truth, or prejudice dressed as truth." Sarah spun again, glaring. "You don't get to talk back to me." Marcus held her stare, his voice steady as stone. "I'll speak when spoken to, and I'll speak when silence allows lies to live." The cabin froze in uneasy stillness. A man across the aisle cleared his throat nervously. "Maybe we should all just relax." But no one truly relaxed. The tension sat heavy, thicker than the recycled air. Sarah sipped her champagne with theatrical disdain. Her every movement meant to provoke. Her smirk grew each time she caught Marcus's calm gaze. The battle lines were drawn, not with fists, not with shouts, but with silence and words sharp enough to wound. And somewhere between the clouds and the cabin lights, everyone knew this clash was far from over. Dinner service had begun. The clinking of cutlery and hushed conversations filled the cabin, but the tension between Sarah and Marcus hovered like turbulence no one could escape. Sarah hadn't stopped glaring. Each time Marcus lifted his glass or adjusted his seat, her lips twisted in disgust. Finally, she snapped. "This is unbearable," Sarah declared loudly, waving her hand so the attendants turned. "How am I supposed to enjoy first class with this right behind me?" One attendant forced a smile. "Ma'am, everyone deserves to enjoy the flight. Please lower your voice." Sarah's cheeks flushed red. "Don't lecture me. I've been flying first class for years. I know who belongs here and who doesn't." Marcus set down his fork. His voice was calm, measured. "Ma'am, you've made your feelings known. Now please, for everyone's sake, lower your voice." Her eyes widened, incredulous. "Did you just tell me what to do?" Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "I asked you to respect the space we all share." A ripple of whispers circled through the rows. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, some sneaking glances, others pretending not to notice. Sarah's breathing grew sharp fast. She leaned over the seat, pointing a manicured finger at him. "You don't get to talk to me like that. You don't get to tell me what to do. People like you, ma'am." The flight attendant stepped in, her voice tight. "That's enough." But Sarah wasn't listening. Marcus's voice cut through, quiet but firm. "It's your behavior, not my presence, that doesn't belong here." The words landed like a slap before the real one came. Sarah's face contorted in rage. In one sudden motion, she twisted in her seat and struck him across the face with her open hand. The sound cracked through the cabin like thunder. Gasps erupted, silverware clattered. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." The world seemed to freeze. Marcus sat perfectly still. His head had turned with the blow, but his body remained upright, controlled. Slowly he turned back toward her, his expression unreadable. The mark of her hand was faintly visible on his cheek, glowing red against his dark skin. The silence that followed was heavier than the slap itself. The attendant's mouth opened, but no words came out. She glanced nervously at Sarah, then at Marcus, torn between duty and fear of confrontation. Sarah's chest heaved for a moment. Even she seemed shocked by her own action. But then her lips curled upward into a smug, satisfied smile. "That's better," she said softly, as if she had restored some twisted order. Marcus inhaled slowly. His voice was low, steady, and impossibly calm. "You just assaulted me." The cabin seemed to collectively hold its breath. A businessman in 3C muttered, "She really hit him." His wife elbowed him into silence. The attendant finally spoke, her words trembling. "Ma'am, you cannot. This behavior is unacceptable." Sarah laughed, bitter and sharp. "Unacceptable, please. Everyone saw what happened. He provoked me. I felt threatened." Marcus's jaw clenched, but his tone remained composed. "I sat in silence. I asked for peace. And you responded with violence." Passengers stared, caught between outrage and fear. Some opened their mouths, but no one spoke up. The narrator's voice pressed into the moment. When injustice strikes, the louder crime is not the hand that hits, but the mouths that stay shut. Silence is the accomplice that turns cruelty into power. Marcus leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving Sarah's. He did not raise his voice, nor his hand. His restraint was louder than her violence. The attendant shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, please, calm down." Sarah crossed her arms, triumphant. "Don't tell me to calm down. Tell him to stay in his place." Her words hung in the air, vile and heavy. Marcus exhaled slowly, his cheek still burning from the slap. "My place," he said softly, "is right here. Whether you like it or not." The cabin fell into suffocating silence again. Emily, the young woman 2 rows back, bit her lip so hard it nearly bled. She wanted to say something, her eyes screamed it, but fear glued her to her seat. Sarah smiled smugly, sipping her wine as though nothing had happened. The attendants exchanged anxious glances, paralyzed by the weight of a choice: confront her privilege or let Marcus carry the wound alone. And in that moment, the entire cabin seemed to tilt, not because of the plane, but because of the unbearable imbalance of justice. The slap had been delivered, but the real damage came after, in the silence that followed. The sting of the slap lingered in the air longer than it did on Marcus's cheek. The attendants whispered frantically near the galley. One finally approached, her hands clasped, her smile stretched thin. "Sir," she began carefully, "we'd like to ask if you can just let this go, for the sake of everyone on board." Marcus raised his brows. His voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. "Let it go." She shifted uncomfortably. "We don't want this situation escalating. We're in the air. Safety comes first." Sarah laughed from her seat. "Finally, someone sensible. Yes, safety first. That's why he should be quiet." Marcus's jaw flexed. He turned slowly to the attendant. "You're asking the man who was assaulted to stay silent." The attendant winced. "It's complicated." "No," Marcus said firmly, "it's not." Passengers kept their eyes glued to screens, magazines, or the backs of seats anywhere but at him. Sarah leaned back with a smirk. "See, everyone agrees. You're disrupting the peace." Marcus's gaze locked on her. "Peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from justice." The cabin grew thick with tension. A man in 3A muttered under his breath, "Just ignore her, buddy. It's not worth it." Marcus's head turned. "Not worth it. To you, maybe, because it's not your cheek burning." The man looked down, embarrassed, and said nothing more. Emily sat frozen 2 rows back, her hands trembling. Her eyes darted from Sarah's smug grin to Marcus's quiet dignity. She opened her mouth, closed it again, and stared at her lap. The attendant tried again, her voice pleading now. "Sir, please, if you could just let her calm down." Marcus chuckled bitterly. "Let her calm down. She struck me, and you're protecting her comfort over my dignity." Sarah folded her arms, triumphant. "Because you provoked me." Everyone saw it. A ripple of murmurs passed, but no one spoke directly against her. The narrator's voice threaded through the silence. "It is not the violence of the oppressor alone that breaks a man, but the silence of those who watch. Each lowered gaze, each bitten tongue, adds weight to the chain that binds justice." Marcus leaned back slowly, eyes steady. "I've seen this before. Different settings, same story. The abuser walks free while the victim is asked to swallow pain in silence." Sarah smirked. sipping her wine. Finally, you're learning your place. Marcus's lips curved in the faintest, coldest smile. No, I'm learning yours. Her smirk faltered for a heartbeat, but she quickly masked it with a laugh. Flight attendants, she said with exaggerated politeness, make sure this man doesn't bother me again, or I'll call corporate and have your jobs. The crew stiffened at the threat. Yes, ma'am, one said quietly, though her eyes betrayed shame. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deep, controlled breaths. His hands rested calmly on his lap, though tension coiled in his muscles. Emily finally whispered to herself, barely audible, this isn't right. But the whisper was swallowed by the hum of the engines. Sarah reclined her seat, smug and unchallenged, the victor of a battle built on silence, and around her, an entire cabin chose comfort over courage, allowing injustice to breathe unchecked. Marcus remained still, his cheeks stinging less than the silence that followed. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, steady, constant, the only sound louder than the silence that smothered everyone. Sarah basked in it, sipping her wine like a queen who had restored order to her kingdom. Marcus sat tall, still, his cheek no longer stinging but his chest heavy with the weight of swallowed injustice. Then came the crack. Enough, a voice said, trembling but clear. Heads turned. Emily, the young woman in 4C, was on her feet. Her hands shook, but her eyes blazed with something stronger than fear. Excuse me, Sarah sneered, twisting in her seat. Are you speaking to me? Emily swallowed hard. Yes, I am. The cabin froze. You can't just hit someone. You can't humiliate him, and then act like you're the victim. We all saw what happened. Sarah laughed, sharp, mocking. Oh, how adorable. The little moral crusader speaks. Sweetheart, you're barely old enough to rent a car. Stay out of grown-up matters. Emily's voice wavered, but she didn't sit down. This isn't a grown-up matter. This is wrong. Passengers shifted. A few glanced at Emily with something like gratitude, but none joined her. Sarah rolled her eyes. Wrong. What's wrong is being forced to sit near people who don't belong here. That's what's wrong. Marcus turned slightly, his gaze meeting Emily's. His voice was calm, quiet, a grounding anchor. Thank you. Emily nodded, her breath shaking, but her voice steadier now. You don't deserve this. Nobody does. Sarah scoffed. Oh, please, don't waste your pity on him. He's perfectly fine. Look at him, sitting there like he owns the place, acting like he's above it all. It's infuriating. Marcus's lips twitched into a faint, tired smile. Above it all? No, just not beneath you. The words landed. A few passengers gasped softly, but still, no one else spoke. Emily took a step forward. Why is everyone so quiet? Why are we letting her get away with this? A man in 3A muttered. Because it's not worth the fight. Emily spun toward him. Not worth the fight. Someone was slapped across the face, humiliated, degraded, and you're saying it's not worth the fight? The man lowered his gaze. Silence swallowed him whole. Sarah clapped slowly, sarcastically. Bravo. The little activist has a voice. What do you want, sweetheart? A medal? Emily's hands clenched. No, I want you to stop. Sarah smirked, tilting her glass. And if I don't, Emily's voice broke, but she forced the words out anyway. Then at least I'll know I wasn't silent. The cabin held its breath. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his tone carrying quiet strength. Bravery doesn't always roar. Sometimes it trembles, but it speaks, and it matters. Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. Spare me the poetry. But something in her smirk flickered. The faintest crack in her armor. Emily sat back down, her chest rising and falling fast, her knuckles white against her knees. She didn't win the battle, not yet, but she had spoken, and the silence had been broken. The narrator's voice hovered like a shadow. Oppression feeds on silence, but all it takes is one whisper, one trembling voice, to remind the world that silence is a choice. And once that choice is broken, resistance finds air to breathe. Sarah tossed back the rest of her wine, her smirk returning, though thinner now. Enjoy your little moment, darling. It won't change anything. But Marcus knew, Emily knew, and somewhere deep down, even Sarah knew, it had already changed everything. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow. Dinner trays had been cleared, but no one was relaxed. The air was too thick, the silence too sharp. Sarah sat tall, triumphant in her perceived victory. Each sip of wine was a toast to herself. Marcus sat just as tall, though his posture carried no arrogance. His stillness was deliberate, his restraint controlled. Every fiber of him radiated patience, but also power held in check. Emily glanced back at him again, her eyes searching. You don't deserve this, she whispered. Marcus gave her the faintest nod. I know, Sarah heard. She laughed loudly, theatrically. Oh, isn't this sweet? The damsel standing up for the poor, oppressed man. Tell me, darling, is this your charity project for the week? Emily turned sharply. You think this is a game? You humiliated him. You hit him. Sarah waved dismissively. And what's he going to do about it? Nothing, because he can't. Marcus's voice cut through calm but iron. You assume silence is weakness. Sarah smirked. Isn't it? Marcus leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady on her. No, silence can be discipline, and discipline is strength. The words rattled her, though she covered it with another scoff. Oh, please, you sound like you're auditioning for a motivational poster. You're not strong, you're powerless. If you had power, you'd have used it already. Marcus's eyes sharpened, the first true edge in his calm demeanor. Are you sure about that? The cabin stilled, passengers leaned in unconsciously, sensing a shift. Sarah blinked, her smirk faltering. What's that supposed to mean? Marcus exhaled slowly, his voice measured, steady. It means, I haven't said who I am, or why I'm here. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Sarah scoffed again, though her laugh wavered. Who you are. You're just another overpaid traveler, pretending to fit in. Marcus's hand moved slowly, deliberately. He reached into his blazer pocket. For a tense heartbeat, the cabin held its breath. He withdrew a black leather badge wallet and flipped it open. The silver gleam caught the dim cabin light. Marcus Reed, he said, his voice carrying authority that silenced even the engines for a moment. United States Federal Air Marshal, sworn to protect every passenger on this flight. The cabin erupted in gasps. Sarah's face drained of color. The attendants froze, their mouths open, eyes darting between Marcus and the badge. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus nodded once. Yes, Sarah stammered. No, this is ridiculous. You're lying. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. Federal badge, federal authority. Do you want me to call the captain to confirm? Her lips trembled, but no words came. The businessman in 3A muttered under his breath, Oh my God. His wife whispered back, He was here the whole time. Emily leaned forward, awe and relief flooding her face. That's why you stayed calm. Marcus's eyes met hers. Calm isn't weakness, it's duty. Sarah's hand shook, her voice cracked. This is insane. You let me. Marcus's voice cut clean through hers. I let you expose yourself. I let everyone here see you for who you are. No badge required. Her face contorted rage, shame, fear, all colliding. You tricked me. No, Marcus said evenly. You revealed yourself. I didn't have to do a thing. The attendants finally stepped forward, their voices trembling with a new tone. Respect. Agent Reed, we didn't realize. Marcus nodded once. That's the point, isn't it? You didn't realize. You judged before you knew. And now, here we are. The narrator's voice threaded through like a verdict. The man they dismissed, degraded, and silenced was the one sworn to defend them. Strengths sat in plain sight, cloaked in patience. Prejudice blinded them, but truth forced their eyes open. Sarah's breathing grew frantic. She clutched her seatbelt, her voice shrill. You can't do this to me. You can't humiliate me like this. Marcus tilted his head. Humiliate you? I didn't strike you. I didn't scream at you. I didn't demand you be silenced. You did that all by yourself. Her eyes darted around, searching for allies. But the passengers who had once looked away now stared at her openly, disgust in their eyes. Emily spoke, her voice steady now. Everyone saw, everyone heard, and now everyone knows. Sarah's lips trembled. For the first time, she had no words. Marcus closed the badge, sliding it calmly back into his blazer. He leaned back in his seat, his voice calm, final. My duty is to protect this flight. That includes you, but don't mistake that for permission to abuse it. The silence that followed wasn't cowardice anymore. It was judgment. Sarah sat trembling, her once smug expression shattered, and Marcus, still and steady, remained the only calm presence in the storm he had endured. For a long moment, no one moved. The badge's gleam still lingered in their minds, a truth they couldn't unsee. Sarah sat rigid, pale, her glass trembling in her hand. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, now cracked under its own weight. This doesn't change anything. He provoked me. Everyone knows it. But the silence that followed wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't complicity. It was disbelief. Then came the soft chime of a phone camera. Emily, her hands steady now, held her phone up. The red record icon blinked. People deserve to see what really happened, she said firmly. Sarah's head snapped toward her. Turn that off. You can't record me without permission. Emily's voice didn't waver. Funny, you didn't ask his permission before you slapped him. A few passengers murmured in agreement. Sarah's voice rose in panic. You'll regret this. Do you know who I am? Marcus's calm voice cut across hers. Yes. You're the woman who struck another passenger in front of witnesses. That's who you are. Emily's camera didn't flinch. She turned slightly, capturing Sarah's flushed face. The stunned passengers, and Marcus, sitting tall with quiet dignity. Stop it, Sarah screeched, trying to grab at the phone. Emily jerked back, holding it out of reach. A businessman across the aisle leaned forward. I saw it too. She hit him. We all did. His wife nodded firmly. And she called him names, ugly things. Sarah whirled on them. You stayed quiet before. Why are you turning on me now? The woman's voice was cold. Because silence has gone on long enough. The cabin filled with whispers, fragments of support for Marcus, murmurs of outrage against Sarah. Another passenger lifted his phone. I'm recording too, just in case she tries to spin this later. Sarah's panic escalated. This is harassment. This is defamation. Marcus remained steady, his tone even. Truth isn't defamation. The attendants finally stepped forward, emboldened by the shift in the cabin. One of them spoke carefully. Ma'am, you need to calm down. Your behavior has already endangered the safety and peace of this flight. Sarah gasped, scandalized. You're taking his side. The attendant straightened her shoulders. I'm taking the side of the truth. The narrator's voice swept over the murmurs. Silence, once a shield for the oppressor, had cracked, and when truth slipped through, it spread like wildfire, unstoppable, undeniable, unmasking the lies it touched. Sarah's voice grew shrill, desperate. I'll sue this airline. I'll sue all of you. A chuckle rose from the back of the cabin, followed by another. Then laughter, not cruel, but disbelieving, rippled through the rows. Sarah's threats, once weapons, now sounded hollow. Emily lowered her phone slightly, her eyes meeting Marcus's. This will go viral before we land. People need to see what dignity looks like, and what hatred looks like. Marcus gave a small nod, his voice quiet but strong. Let the truth speak louder than I ever could. Sarah covered her face with her hands, shaking her head. You'll ruin me. Marcus's gaze held steady. No, you did that yourself. The businessman in 3A muttered, almost to himself, history repeating itself, but this time, people are watching. The hum of the engines seemed louder now, carrying the sound of shifting tides. Sarah sank into her seat, trembling, muttering about lawyers and rights, but no one listened anymore. Phones captured her red face, her shaking hands, her collapse from arrogance into fear. And beside her, Marcus sat still, untouched, unbroken, unbowed. The power she thought she held had dissolved, exposed by the light of truth and the lens of witnesses no longer willing to stay silent. The hours after the confrontation dragged, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. What had once been icy silence now hummed with quiet conversations, whispers of solidarity, and the soft buzz of phones. Sarah sat rigid, her face blotched red, muttering under her breath. Her wineglass sat untouched now. No one looked at her with admiration or envy anymore, only disgust or pity. Marcus remained calm, eyes forward, every movement controlled. He didn't gloat, didn't lecture. He simply was, steady as stone. Emily leaned toward him. Do you think they'll do anything when we land? Marcus's reply was even. They have to. FAA regulations, federal jurisdiction. Assaulting a passenger is already serious. Assaulting a federal marshal, that's a crime she can't run from. Sarah jerked her head toward him, panic rising. No, you wouldn't. You can't arrest me. You provoked me. This isn't fair. Marcus didn't turn to look at her. His voice was low, steady. Fairness is finally catching up with you. The intercom crackled. The captain's voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach our final descent, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Upon landing, law enforcement will be boarding the aircraft. We ask for your cooperation. Gasps spread through the cabin. All eyes darted to Sarah. Her face drained of blood. No, this isn't happening, Emily whispered, almost to herself. It's happening. The landing gear groaned, wheels meeting tarmac. A heavy silence hung as the plane taxied toward the gate. For Sarah, every second was a drumbeat of dread. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, passengers didn't rise. They stayed seated, watching, waiting. Then came the knock at the cabin door. A pair of uniformed airport police officers stepped inside, flanked by TSA agents. The lead officer's voice was calm but firm. "Where is the passenger involved in the in-flight disturbance?" Every eye turned toward Sarah. Her voice came out shrill, cracking. "Don't you dare. I am not going anywhere with you." The officer moved closer. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." She clutched at her seatbelt like a lifeline. "No. He tricked me. He set me up." She pointed at Marcus. "He's the one who should be arrested." Marcus finally turned to her, his voice unshakable. "I didn't lay a hand on you. You struck me." In front of witnesses, on federal transport, Emily rose slightly in her seat, phone still recording. "We all saw it. We all heard it." The businessman in 3A added, "It's on multiple videos." She slapped him, screamed racial slurs, and then she tried to cover it up. The officer's eyes hardened. "Ma'am, please stand." Sarah shook her head violently. "No, no, no. You can't do this. Do you know who my husband is? Do you know what kind of people I know?" The officer's tone didn't waver. "That doesn't change the law." Passengers began murmuring, not with fear this time, but with approval. Soft claps started, scattered but growing, filling the cabin with a quiet, defiant rhythm of solidarity. Emily's eyes glistened. "Justice," she whispered. Sarah finally stood, her movements jerky, desperate. She tried to lunge toward the aisle, but the officers held her arms firmly. Her shrill protests echoed down the cabin. "This isn't over. You'll regret this, all of you." But the passengers didn't cower. Phones stayed raised, cameras catching her downfall. Marcus stood only when the officers had secured her. His voice was calm, professional. "She's all yours." The lead officer nodded respectfully. "We'll file the report. Thank you for your composure." Marshal Reed. The attendants looked at Marcus differently now, with reverence, with apology. One whispered, "We should have stood up sooner." Marcus met her eyes. "Next time, do." As Sarah was escorted off the plane, her voice faded down the jet bridge, a tangle of rage and desperation. The passengers sat in silence, not from fear, but from awe. Emily lowered her phone, her hands trembling. She looked at Marcus. "You didn't just endure, you showed us what real strength is." Marcus shook his head gently. "I showed nothing new. The strength was always here. It's just easier to see when truth forces it into the light." The narrator's voice swept in, final and clear. "Power built on arrogance crumbles when truth is revealed, and the silence that once fed injustice became the stage where justice was finally heard." As Marcus gathered his bag and prepared to disembark, the businessman in 3A called out, "Thank you, Marshal, for protecting more than just this flight." Marcus gave a quiet nod. "Stay awake. Stay honest. That's how we protect each other." And with that, he walked down the aisle calm, steady, unbroken. Behind him, the echoes of applause rose again, not just for the man, but for the truth that could no longer be silenced. By the time Marcus stepped off the plane, Sarah's shrill protests were already echoing through airport security. The officers guided her firmly down the jet bridge, her face red, her hair disheveled, her threats meaningless against the cold click of handcuffs. The passengers who disembarked behind Marcus carried more than luggage. They carried stories, video clips, proof. And by the time they reached baggage claim, the proof had already begun to spread. Emily stood a few feet from Marcus, phone in hand, her voice hushed but filled with awe. "It's already online," she whispered. "The video, it's everywhere." Marcus glanced at her phone. His face appeared on the screen. Composed, badge gleaming. Then Sarah's hand, sharp and cruel, cracked across his cheek. The sound was louder on video than it had been in the cabin. Gasps filled the recording, followed by her shrill insults. And his quiet words. The caption beneath the clip read, "Entitled woman slaps black man in first class. He's an air marshal." Emily swallowed hard. "It already has 100,000 views." Marcus's eyes stayed steady. Truth spreads fast when it's undeniable. By the time he reached the terminal, news alerts were flashing on overhead screens. Breaking, viral incident on Flight 237, passenger assaults. Federal Marshal, exclusive footage. Slap in the sky sparks outrage. Airlines under scrutiny for handling of in-flight racism. Travelers stopped, pointing at the screens. At Marcus, some whispered, others nodded with respect. A young man near the gate muttered, "That's him. That's the guy from the video." Emily caught Marcus's eye. You've gone viral, whether you wanted to or not. Marcus's reply was quiet, deliberate. It's not about me. It's about what was revealed. Meanwhile, Sarah's name was already being dragged through the mud. Online detectives had unearthed her social media, her luxury vacations, her smug captions. Within hours, her profiles were locked. Her photos flooded with comments. Is this the woman who slapped the marshal? Racist and violent, disgraceful, privilege, doesn't protect you anymore. A headline ticked across the screen, in bold. Attorney General confirms, assault on Federal Marshal will be prosecuted. Emily's lips parted in awe. She's finished. Marcus exhaled, his face unreadable. Justice isn't about her being finished. It's about the world being reminded. At baggage claim, a small crowd gathered around him. Some passengers from the flight approached shyly, phones still in hand. The businessman from 3A spoke first. Marshal Reed, I wanted to say I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner, for letting it get that far. His wife nodded, eyes downcast. We froze. We shouldn't have. Marcus studied them for a moment, then said quietly, what matters is what you do next time. Emily spoke up, her voice firm. There will be a next time. Maybe not on a plane, maybe in an office, a classroom, a street corner. We can't stay silent anymore. Marcus gave her a small nod of approval. Exactly. The narrator's voice lingered like a verdict. Injustice is not just in the act, but in the silence that allows it to breathe. Truth spreads, but change only comes when witnesses choose not to look away. That night, news channels replayed the footage on loop. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag slap in the sky. Hashtag justice at 30K feet. Hashtag Air Marshal Reed. Commentators debated what it meant for airline policies, for race relations, for bystander accountability. But Marcus didn't watch. He sat in a quiet hotel room near the airport, phone turned face down on the nightstand. Emily's message buzzed through anyway. Thank you for standing strong. People are listening now. Marcus finally allowed himself a tired smile. He typed back, don't thank me. Carry it forward. That's how real change happens. Meanwhile, Sarah sat in a holding cell. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, her calls unanswered. Her husband hadn't come. Her lawyers hadn't arrived. The world outside her phone had seen who she really was, and it wasn't someone they could protect anymore. She replayed the slap in her mind, over and over. Once, it had made her feel powerful. Now, it was the sound of her empire crumbling. The narrator's voice rose one final time, clear and unwavering. Privilege can hide a person for a season, but truth is patient. Truth waits, watches, and when it surfaces, it levels the sky itself. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it lands softly, like an aircraft returning to Earth, inevitable, inescapable, undeniable. End. So the flight that began in silence ended in a chorus, not just of applause in a cabin, but of voices across the world, refusing to look away any longer. The storm had passed. The flight was over. The videos had gone viral, and Sarah now sat in the hands of the justice system she had mocked. But Marcus Reed wasn't celebrating. He sat alone on a bench outside the airport hotel the next morning, watching planes lift into the sky. Each one looked small against the vast blue canvas. Yet each carried hundreds of lives, each with their own burdens, their own silence. Emily found him there, coffee in hand. She offered it wordlessly. He accepted with a small nod. You didn't sleep, she said gently. No, Marcus replied, his voice steady but tired. She studied him for a moment. You should feel proud. You held your ground. You changed things. Marcus shook his head slowly. I didn't change anything. I just revealed what was already there. The silence, the bias, the cruelty. It's not new. It's not ending because of one flight. Emily sat beside him, her voice quiet but determined. But you showed us what silence costs. You gave us a choice we can't ignore anymore. Marcus turned, meeting her gaze. Then promise me something, Emily. What? When it happens again, and it will, don't wait for someone else to speak. Don't stay quiet. She swallowed, nodding firmly. I won't. The narrator's voice rose softly, like the echo of truth itself. The weight of silence is heavier than a slap, sharper than an insult. It chains the oppressed and comforts the oppressor. But when silence breaks, when witnesses find their voices, injustice has nowhere left to hide. Later that day, Marcus scrolled briefly through his phone. Headlines, hashtags, interviews, his name everywhere. People calling him a hero, a symbol. He turned the phone off. He wasn't a symbol. He was just a man who had done his duty, on a flight, in a seat, with patience instead of rage. The real story wasn't his badge. It wasn't even the slap. The real story was the cabin, 100 eyes that saw injustice and chose, for too long, to stay silent, and then chose, finally, to speak. Emily's video played on screens across the world. In classrooms, teachers paused lessons to discuss it. In offices, workers whispered about it over coffee. In living rooms, families debated, argued, reflected. Some defended Sarah, their voices brittle, but most didn't. Most saw what was clear: a woman's entitlement, a man's restraint, and the moment when silence fractured into truth. Sarah meanwhile faced arraignment. Her lawyers spoke of stress, of misunderstanding, of a momentary lapse. But the video spoke louder. She had wanted power. Instead, she became a cautionary tale. Marcus rose from the bench, stretching, the morning light warming his face. Emily stood with him. "Where do you go from here?" she asked. He glanced toward the sky, where another plane ascended, small against the horizon. "Back to work. There'll be another flight, another silence waiting to be broken." Emily smiled faintly, and maybe another Emily ready to speak. Marcus returned the smile, brief but real. "That's the hope." The narrator's voice closed the story with finality. Racism thrives in silence, but justice grows in the cracks where silence is broken. One slap, one flight, one truth revealed. Not the end, but a beginning. The weight of silence remains, heavy as ever, but now, more hands are ready to lift it. And with that, Marcus Reed walked forward, into the stream of travelers, blending back into the crowd, a quiet guardian, a patient witness, carrying not just his badge but the unshakable truth that dignity does not bow, and silence, once broken, can never again be whole.